everyone, and welcome to my studio. This is Rebecca from Pt1 with a long-awaited video. Today is the 13th of May, and I have tried to do this video since the 8th of April. I did make, I think, 4 videos in the first and second week of April that I will edit into the process of this video and maybe sections after this. A lot has went on in the last month or so. I took a break from doing anything journal wise except doing things for myself, and then we had a vacation about the middle of April, and that was fine. And then I went to North Carolina to house sit for my daughter, who was on a week's vacation. And while I was there, I fed dogs, fed fish, fed chickens, and basically, you know, my plan was to just kind of chill out. I took all of my paper making supplies with me, minus the blender, which I had to stop and buy on the way. But as things happened, ultimately I was in a little bit of an accident while I was up there, so nothing got done. And of course we had a major storm come through, and I just missed it. I came home right before it happened, but part of my accident was because of the storm as it was beginning. But anyway, I won't go into the details of that, but I'm okay, the car's okay. It just was a very misfortunate or unfortunate predicament. But then I got back home last week and thought, okay, I could make the video, and I had planned on doing it outside, and you might even see bits of the video that I did outside like 5 weeks ago. I don't know for sure how or if I will edit that in. But of course I get back and the cicadas are everywhere, and you can't even hear yourself think outside. So there's no videoing outside. And even though they're almost gone, that's still all you can hear is this roar, you know, in the trees. So no videoing outside. So with all of that said, oh, the one other thing is, while I was gone, my husband picked the roses. We have a Seven Sisters rose in our front garden, and he picked rose petals for me while I was gone. So I was able to get these 2 quarts that smell so good. Oh my goodness, if the camera could convey the scent, it's just delicious. And so I got these 2 quarts out of that rose, and so that's why I had it open, just so I could smell it while I was talking. And I know the glass is going to glare, but you know, that's what glass does. And in excerpts of the video, I have talked about ranunculus. If you want to make paper with flower petals, then this is one of the places that you need to start. These are ranunculus, and I just wanted to show you. I was able to gather these after I got back, but they're long gone now. So I got these 3 jars of tiny jars, like jelly jars. I can't remember what was in this, but anyway, I keep the pretty jars to put stuff in. But anyway, these have the whole flower dried in this little jar, whereas these are just petals. So what I'm going to run through in this section of the video is what you need to make paper. And if you want flower petals in your paper, then you'll need to dry them, and there will be an excerpt in this section of the video that I've already done. So let me set this aside. So here are some of the petals that I have already dried off of the ranunculus that you just saw in the previous section. These are the ones that are kind of a cream color with a white edge. These are the yellow ones. See how good they hold their color. I love the yellow ones especially to make paper with, and there's two different colors of yellow, this bright orangey yellow and then this light, more buttery type yellow. And then this is the ones that are more orange, and you can see there's various colors of orange in here. Some of them got rained on, so they kind of stick together, but they do dry out. And what I use to dry is paper holders, like office, I don't know what you call them, but you know, you put papers in, it's stackable, and it lets the air flow through and works really well. Now I'm going to move these and get the other two. Now these on the top here are the red ones. There's not that many red ones. They look red but when you compare to the orange, they're quite different. And then this is the purple, and I have more of those obviously than I do others. Sometimes the purple will dry a little bit and look orangey, but these were purple ones. Some, like I said, some of them got rained on, and they tend to like stick together. But you can see on the outside it's purple, so this could have been more of an immature one. And that one looks red, but it came from a purple one. So, and these are actually still a little bit damp. They're not all quite ready. The yellow is ready, and the white with the pink on the edge. In fact, I'm going to move this one to nearer the top. And I have on top of one of my shelving units, I keep these up high. The air circulates, and of course it's warmer up there. And I've had these going for about a week, but I have added to it within that week, especially the purple, because I did harvest these, the ones that are not quite dry yet. I'd harvested, I think, day before yesterday, so they're not quite dry yet. But this is one of the first steps if I'm going to be putting flower petals in my paper. Then I harvest and I dry. Now I do have roughly 100 jars, give or take, with flower petals already dried. And this is something I got just a few days ago. These are blue hydrangeas that I helped my mother clean house last week, and they had picked them, I suppose, from their garden. And my mom was going to throw them away, and I'm like, oh no, you're not. So I brought them home with me, and I know you can't really see them. I've got them in a little tin pitcher right now, ready to harvest when the time comes. And the ones that fall off I keep putting in this jar. And while I'm here, if I can get this across the camera, these are small jars. I'll just show you. Oh my goodness, that smells so good. These are rose petals in this jar. Let me show you a couple of my bigger jars. Now this is two different colors of roses, and it's different than the one I just showed you, but look, these are all pink. And I also I make handmade soap, and I put them in there. Now this one is a different one altogether, and it was a purple rose, and you can see that it's very, very purple. So, and this is just a small sampling of what I have, and I've been gathering rose petals for about 4 years now, and not just rose petals, but other petals as well. And I have some ranunculus left over from last year. So if you want to put flower petals in your paper, just pick something out of your garden, let it dry really good, The other thing that you will need is a blender, and you need a dedicated blender. When I decided I wanted to make paper about 4.5, 5 years ago, my husband went out and bought me a blender from Ollie's. So it was a cheap, probably remanufactured, whatever. It's held up really good. This is a glass pitcher, and it's what I use to make my pulp, and I will explain that in a little more detail as we go along. So, since I didn't get to use the blender that I bought on the way, I decided taking it back and getting my money back, but it was only $22, so it's just a plain old blender, and it's a plastic pitcher, not picture, with 12 functions, 48 ounce capacity and all that. But what I have decided is, when I chop up my flower petals, because you do need them chopped up unless they're teeny tiny to start with for them to look right, unless you just like the chunky look. I decided to keep the blender for the dried petals, and do just flower petals. And if I can reach, this is rose petals. This is a rose that did not hold its color. It's got a little bit of a pink in there, but this is after I have chopped them up in the glass blender. And I don't want to pour them out because it's going to be hard to pick them up, but you can see they're chopped up. And so you need something kind of like that if you want to put flower petals in the paper for it to really process well. So I decided to keep that blender just to chop up rose petals, so dry stuff. And then it's dedicated. The problem I'm going to have is finding room in my cabinet above my washer and dryer to store it. Today I'm going to show you a few things that I make my paper pulp from. I use tissue to give me color. I use book pages and end papers from books for bulk, especially book pages. Also use end papers for color as well. And I use scrapbook paper that has, this came in a paper pack and I didn't really care for it. So this is very thin. So this would have a little bit of color, but not enough to even tinge the water. So I break this down and use that for bulk. And then I also use like copy paper. Any paper that does not have a plastic coating would work. I use a lot of book pages. The other thing I use besides tissue and napkins, which I didn't bring any in here to show you, but tissue and napkins are pretty much the same texture and consistency. This is a paper towel that I used when I was mopping up from making some tea stained and coffee stained papers. So I would throw this in. Now everything, once you get all your papers, decide what you want to use, then you have to run through a shredder. And I have a cross cut shredder, so it cuts in both directions. And what I do is I have these big giant bags, and when I'll take a session and just cut up a bunch of stuff, and I keep like colors together. So you can see that I have made green paper from this batch. These are actually from this batch, and so you get, depending on how much white paper you put in against the green and or how much yellow against the green, you can play with your colors. I think I made these are 5x7s. I made some 9x12s, 8x10s, and some 4x4s, and I have a 5x6. So that's what I made out of this. It was full. A little bit of paper goes a long way. You would not believe how little paper it takes to make more paper. So I guess the next thing actually is the other thing that you'll need that obviously won't be in this picture is a paper shredder, which I did mention already. So I'm going to go on to deckle and mold. Now, I have made my own deckle and mold with the exception of this one, and I'll explain all this shortly. So this is the sizes that I make. This is the biggest size, and hopefully it'll all be in camera. If you want to go this route, then in thrift stores or wherever you might find them, a wooden varnished picture frame is what you'll need, and whatever size, and you'll need 2 of them. You'll take all the guts out of it so that you just have this, like this. And so, so you finish the one side, and when I say finish it, just take all the hardware and everything off. Then you buy a very fine mesh screen. Now I can go back to where I ordered this on Amazon like 2-3 years ago and find out the actual fineness of this. If I had it to do again, I would drop down to 1 level coarser, simply to let the water drain through better, but it does make exceptionally fine paper. And then you want to just cut it to size, smooth your edges as best as possible, because these will cut you if you get your fingers in there or any other body parts. And a staple gun that is, and staple it on tight as possible. Over time, the weight of the water and all that will make it a little wobbly, but that actually doesn't have any effect on your paper unless it gets really bad, so that you get a weight in the center, and then you'll get more pulp there. Then that can become a problem, but that's when you'll need to strip it off and do it, redo it. So this is a 9x12. This is the next size I make. You can see this is just wood with a little gold paint on it. And as long as it's varnished, it'll hold up in water for quite a while. This is an 8x10, exactly the same process and the same. I think I bought a roll of fabric that was 12 inches wide and maybe 15 feet long, 10 feet, something like that. This is a 5x6 little picture frame. Again, same process. And this is 4.5 by 4.5. And at one time I had a 10x10, and then I also had something round or oval, but I just didn't like how those looked or worked, and so I discounted those. This is a 5x7. This is a kit that I found. It was over 20 years old, new in the box, and so of course I bought it for like, I don't know, $4 maybe. It came with the mold and deckle, which you see here. This is mesh, but it's plastic. It's a plastic mesh. It makes really good paper. This is 5x7. I don't know if I said that already. So everything that you see here is exactly how it came. I did wash this one off after I used it last time, and I did this one, but sometimes I don't, because it don't matter that much. The only way it really matters is if you have some dried pieces on there that's one color, and you're making another like completely opposite color, and when it gets wet again you might have some little bits and pieces, so you might want to clean them off for that. You would want to clean anything in this area on both sides, but the outside don't matter that much unless you're changing colors. So that's the mold and deckle. Homemade and store-bought, I don't even know if they make these anymore. Like I said, it was based on the date on the box. It was about 20 years old, and I've had it for 3 years maybe. So with this, I'm going to turn off the camera, clean up where I have here, and then I'll go on to the next part about the next other things that you need to make handmade paper. So I shall return shortly. So I have 3 gallon plastic pitchers that I use for water. Now when I make my pulp, the way I do it this is 8 cups, so I think this would be a half a gallon. So I have some shredded paper. Now I'm not going to actually do this, but I am going to sort of demonstrate, and I realize that the distance between what I'm doing and the camera is not that great, so I'm going to do it this way, although it's not how I would do it normally. But basically what I do for this size, an 8 cup pitcher, is I just take a handful, something about like that, and I put it inside, and I put 3 of those. And then once I put those in, then I fill it up to the top with hot water, pure hot water. That just helps the paper break down faster and become pulp. Now, the fineness of paper that you want will depend on what settings that you use and the settings that you have, and hopefully this is not blurry or anything, on your blender. So this is the way I use this one. I have it on high all the time. If I want chunky paper where there's like some bigger bits left in it, then I'll do the blend, grind, fruit smoothie, and well, I'll do up to the green smoothie for roughly 10 to 15 seconds each time. So boom, 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 and just keep doing it until I like what I'm seeing in the slurry that it makes. If I want really more fine paper, then I'll do the whole gamut, the ice crush and the milkshake. The ice crush, it'll go as long as you hold the button down, where the rest of these you have to turn them on and off. Usually what I do, for my, I think it's an 18 quart Rubbermaid big tub, I'll put 3 of these pitchers of slurry in the mix. And usually what I do is I'll make 2 that are fine, very, very fine, and then I'll make 1 that's about just sort of chunky, or you know, where it has bits in it that you can see, but not something that makes the paper really coarse. So, but ultimately the type of paper you want to make is up to you on your personal taste and how you want to use it. So that's what I do. And then for each one of these that I put in the tub, I put in then 1.5 of these of hot water. So by the time I've put in all of the water and the slurry, then the tub is maybe 6 to 8 inches from the top. So so that's kind of the recipe, quote unquote, that I use. Also, you can see that this paper is all blue, but I wouldn't want to make paper that is this color, because if I wanted this color, I wouldn't have ripped it up in the first place. I'd have just used it the way it was. And it's got, you know, a few little stragglers of whatever the last color I did in it. So what I usually do is one whole picture of book pages, and then maybe some copy paper, a little tissue. Tissue will make your paper softer, and that's good if you want something that's a little more elegant. The coarser the paper that you use, the coarser your paper will turn out. So I always try to put a little bit of tissue in to soften it, no matter what paper I use. And that could be, you need like 1 to 3 sheets of, you know, what comes like 20 by 20, I think it is. So, and then the tissue will also give you color. So, like for this, I would use book pages and I could put in maybe some green to make it slightly turquoise, or put in some yellow to make it more a light green, or just put in white to make this blue a lighter blue. There's the actual recipe you put together to make the end color is unlimited. And another thing that I have done in the past is throw in some of the little blocks, the little powder blocks of watercolor to color the water if I'm doing white, but I want to give it a cast, like a color cast. I've done that before. So you can experiment. I have used acrylic paint to color my water a little bit, but acrylic paint, because it is plastic, does leave a texture, and I don't like the texture. Now, speaking of texture, I'm going to pause the camera and bring in what I use to put the wet paper on when I've taken it out and drained it. In fact, I'll back up a step and show you, sort of do a demonstration of how to get the water out of your paper once you've lifted it out with your mold and deckle. So, I'm going to pause the camera, move this, I'll be right back. Now, when I get ready to actually make paper, I'll demonstrate this with the real thing, but for the purpose of the process, I'm going to do a sort of a demonstration. So, if you're doing very small mold and deckles, like something like this 4.5, I did have some 3.5 by 5, but I think I decided not to do that size anymore. But if you have something small and you want to make, small ones, then you don't need an 18 quart tub. Something along this size or slightly bigger will do. It will need more water in it, but this is just for demonstration. So what you want to do is you have your slurry in here, and I don't have it right here with me, but I have a couple of old wooden spoons that I use to stir it, because you want it stirred up. You don't want it to settle, because it does settle pretty quickly. So you'll stir it up, and then you'll have your mold and deckle, and you want to make sure they're even. So I usually just kind of balance them on the edge and, put them even. The one without the screen goes on top. The one with the screen goes on the bottom with the stapled side up. So this would be your very bottom. This would be the middle section. This can go either way, whichever it goes on this particular type. If you're using picture frames, obviously you put them back to back. So the next thing you do, you stir it up, put this in. Some people go like this, so kind of go forward. Some people go straight down. That I would not recommend that. So you want to kind of go in like this. Make sure that it's completely underwater. The deeper you go into your bath of slurry, the more paper particles you're going to get on your mold and deckle. So then you bring it up level, and what I do is I just hold it for a few minutes, not a few minutes, a few seconds, maybe a minute, let it drain, and then once it has kind of drained away a little bit, I'll take the top off. You'll have a layer of bumpy, kind of bumpy looking paper here, especially if you've done it chunky. Then what I do is I'll turn it up like this, and you can see how that's draining like that. So I'll turn it up and just let all the water come to one end, and then I'll turn it and let it go to the other end. Now, here's a little trick that I have learned in the process. Is sometimes when you put that in and bring it up, no matter how level you have this, depending on how your slurry is layered inside, your bath, you might have an area, especially toward the upper corners, that is a little thinner. And if that's the case, then that's the first place I'll go to, because the water running under it along here will naturally bring a little bit of those paper particles to the edge. And so that I just use that to help level it out. If I've really messed up and either have a bald spot or something's, got in it that I don't want, whatever, then what I'll do is I'll just turn it upside down, just sit it on top of the water like this, and pull it right back up, and the water will pull all of it off or almost all of it off, and if you need to do it again, you can. But let whatever you've put there settle slightly, because the water will just pull it right back off. You just keep doing it. I have taken pieces of paper that I have taken out, patted dry, which I'll show you in just a second, and laid to the side, and then as I'm putting them out, accidentally poke them with my finger and make a hole. So I just take the whole sheet, throw it back in, and make another one. So after you have taken your paper out of the water, and you've taken the top off, and you've let it drain as much as possible, then the next thing you have is you have an absorbent. I use placemats, and I use varying thicknesses depending on what stage I'm doing, but this one is for demonstration, but I would have another one to start with. I buy these at the thrift store. There's no way to really know for sure without taking it maybe to the bathroom and testing it if they're waterproof with, Scotch Guard or some other waterproofing on it. If so, they're not going to do you any good. You want some that are absorbent. But for demonstration purposes, so you've got this, you've got as much water drained off of it, so you turn it over and lay it down on your paper. Now, if I was doing this size, I would put one here and one here, but for demonstration. So now this is upside down, and what I would do is I just give it a little push, the water will bubble up. Then you take, and I'll just hit my light, what did I do to it? Okay. You take a well-used sponge. I just have a little bin, not plastic, but a metal can with them in. You want to absorb as much water as possible, like this. But at the same time, you don't want to press it so hard that it dries out, so that when you raise this up, it does not remove itself. But then on the other hand, you don't want to leave so much water that it just tears when you lift it up. So it might take a few practices to find that happy medium to kind of know where you are. But anyway, you'll just go through here, dry up, make sure you get the edges really, really good, because that's where it needs to start peeling from first. And then you'll just ease it up, and sometimes it might come a little loose in here, but not loose from the whole thing. The perfect one is that you'd pull it off like this and it'd just be laying there, and that has happened several times, but most of the time it'll be loose at the corners a little bit. And so what I do is I just take it and very gently hold it as I ease up, because you don't want to stretch it until it removes itself. Then I'll take my sponge and I'll just pat it slightly, because sometimes it might have a little roll in it, and you just pat it slightly to smooth it out. You don't press it. Don't press it at all at this stage. You just want to pat it flat without wrinkles. So if it has a little wrinkle at the bottom, you can lift it up and pull just slightly, but basically you just want to, pat it to where it's like flat. Okay, since I've demonstrated how to dry your paper, I'm now going to demonstrate how I layer my paper. I have I think 4 or 6 of these like foam rubber placemats, so they're waterproof. I have it's the top of an old sewing machine cabinet, so it's a piece of wood like that thick, and it's about a 15 by 18, or maybe a little bit bigger. It's roughly this size, but not quite that long. So anyway, so I put my this pad on top. Then I'll put my most absorbent placemats first, and then layer my paper, and then keep stacking. One thing I want to mention that I haven't mentioned already, excuse me, hopefully this will focus, can you see the pattern? It's just a cross weave pattern of the threads in this placemat. Now, if this particular one is one that I like to use the most, and it's similar, but it's got a little rougher. Whatever pattern of thread that you put your paper on when it's wet, as it dries, it will take on that pattern. So if you want a smooth, especially writing smooth piece of paper, then you need to put it on as fine a weave of absorbent cotton as possible. But on the very first layer, I don't do that. On the second time that I change this out, that's when I start putting the stuff to actually form what the paper's going to look like in the outcome. If you go past that, then you're stuck with pretty much with whatever you've got. Okay, so here we've got a piece of wood, or it can be anything as long as it's flat and hard. I've got this as a waterproof barrier, got this as my next layer, then it's going to have paper on it. Then we'll have another layer, and we'll keep layering until we get as many sheets of paper that you're making, or you run out of slurry, or whatever the case may be. And then when I get to my very top layer, I'll put a top on. And if it's the big paper, like the 9x12, I may put 2 or 3 on the top, just to help absorb as much as possible. And then the last thing that I put on is, I have 8 16-inch ceramic tiles. There's 2 here. They're back to back, so no matter which side, let's see if I can do this. No matter which side that I'm using, it's a smooth side. And it does, oh, I just banged my lot. It does need to be a smooth one. I do this on top of my dryer. I stack them 8 high. My dryer works fine. It don't harm it in any way whatsoever. And I'll let it sit for the very first day. I might change it out a couple of times, maybe every 10-12 hours, or in the morning and the evening. After, I might do the same thing the second day if it's the big paper. The third day, it'll be once a day until it's dry. Little sheets will dry much faster. You can get them dry usually 5x7 and down. Will dry in about 5 days if it's not rainy or whatever, because even though it might be dry, you still might have humidity in your house. So that can vary. If it's bigger paper, then it takes a week. I don't think I've ever had any paper go longer than about 8 days, but it is a process. You have to keep changing the placemats out. You can use other things besides placemats, but that is what works for me. It's the right size for various size papers. It's movable, and so that's what works for me. So this has given you an idea of the process from start to finish. So the next part in this little series will be the actual paper making, and you'll see me then demonstrate all the things that I've just explained to you. So thank you very much for watching. We'll get on with the next paper making session in the next video.